All right, it's time to finish up this case study. If you missed the first part, the link for part 1 is in the description below, as well as some of the other bits of information or reference material that I'm going to mention that you might want to look at. That is free. All right, so we have this 2000 Yukon with a severe lack of power. And again, this is a case study I presented 15, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. There's nothing new and earth-shattering about this, what I'm going to show you, but it's missed by a whole lot of people. And this is my little advertisement here. Less stuff, more thought equals effective training. Something that educators have been saying for a long, long time, despite many of them ignoring it completely. So with that, this truck had the severe lack of power and it had a PO121 in it. And so what that meant was that the TP sensor had insufficient activity. So what does that mean? Well, if you look in the enable criteria, it tells you what it means. It means that the predicted throttle, the throttle angle, and the actual throttle angle didn't match. The actual throttle angle is the information coming from the sensor to the PCM, and the predicted throttle angle is from other sensors, primarily MAP. What it's saying basically is this is a TP rationality code. It's detecting a skewed or stuck TP. Now, what I have here on the screen is GM's free Mode 6 information. The link for this website is below, and there's no registration. You just click on it and go, and it'll give you a little more engineering-ish speak on the codes. And so it's basically just saying the code means you had a TP sensor input that doesn't make sense. All right, in my program that I originally did at the CAN conference a million years ago, I had this chart, and it wasn't meant to be a standalone. It's kind of meant to work with some caveats and such. But let's just work with this for a minute, because this case study is pretty straightforward. So we have a no power complaint or low power complaint. And so we have two charts here. And basically, we're just asking the question, okay, we're going to go wide open throttle. And in this case, this is an old car, so we're expecting immediate power enrichment mode. And so we're going to ask the question, we have no power, what's the O2 sensor doing? If it's high, then it's rich. If it's low, then it's lean. And if you're going to be, if you're losing power and your foot's to the floor in your power enrichment mode, if you're getting enough fuel, your O2 sensors should be high. So here's the screen we saw in the last part. And you can see I'm wide open throttle, and the time period in the wide open throttle, which I mentioned in part 1, is about 10 seconds. And the first 5 seconds or so into it, we are rich. We are very rich. This lack of power has nothing to do with a lack of fuel. Now, the hash you see onwards after that is another discussion, and but for right now, let's just lay that aside, because it's not important. We already know what we needed to know. It's got plenty of fuel. All right, so now we'll go back to our chart and we look at what we do if the O2 sensor is high under power enrichment, and we have two choices. Is the load high or is the load low? The engine load, the cylinder filling, how well this thing's breathing. And looking at the data, the load is very low. It's at 21%. That's super low. Now, the load is primarily calculated off the mass airflow sensor. So do I need to do a VE check? Do I need to do? No. I was power enrichment. I was rich. My mass airflow sensor, maybe it's skewed a little bit, but it sure isn't skewed enough to cause this problem. So my load is a good number. I'm going to use that. It's super, super low. This engine has a serious breathing issue. Now, moving down on the chart here, we see that we go to the engine load is low, and it's a restriction. And now we need to figure out which side of the engine is this restriction. Is it on the intake side or is it on the exhaust side? Because both issues can cause a severe lack of power. Now, the exhaust restriction is much more common and everybody talks about it, but if you do enough drivability work, you'll find that there's a whole bunch also of intake restrictions, and we need an easy way of picking it out. Can we do that? Well, yes, we can. Right on the screen, in part 1, you had all the information to sort this thing out, and what I'm pointing out here is my throttle blade is open, wide open, and look what's happening to load. Load is going down. The pressure in the manifold is going down. The vacuum is going up. And so how does that happen? If your throttle blade is wide open, then manifold pressure should be about that of barrel pressure, and it's not. It's much lower. And so the only explanation here is we have an intake restriction. With that, it's just a matter of looking around. Now in this case, I don't think I even had opened the hood on this vehicle before I got to this point. Real quick diagnosis, pop the hood open, and there's the little rubber flexible intake tube that collapses. But that's all that was wrong with this thing. Now when I said it's a quick, easy diagnosis, simple, easy peasy, I'm coming from the perspective of someone, and I'm not alone, who actually takes scan data seriously. Many diagnoses can be come to much quicker if people would take the data seriously, and they don't. And that includes many people you see here on YouTube.